Hi, this is Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter, and you're listening to Job Search Radio. Shows that I do where I interview corporate HR people are really very interesting to me, and I think to my listeners as well, because they really share subtle information that HR is looking for when they're evaluating people. This one is a particularly good interview because he talks about something that I haven't heard spoken about before, the language that's being used within an organization and how job hunters need to learn that language when they interview. So this interview with Chris Brown of West Corporation, a really interesting one. So I hope you enjoy it. I want to encourage you to take some notes along the way. And if you like Job Search Radio, if you like this show, I hope you give it a 5-star review in iTunes. It'll help other people discover the show. Now, let's sing along.
Are you looking for a new job or interested in leveling up? Job Search Radio is your go-to resource for insider tips on job hunting and growing your career. Here's your host, Jeff Altman.
So my guest this time is Chris Brown, VP of HR with West Corporation, a Fortune 1000 telecom firm based in the U.S., Omaha, a whole bunch of places. Hey, Chris, welcome to Job Search Radio. Great to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I'm excited about talking today about job applicants and the application process. It's exciting.
We're going to have a lot of fun. So, Chris, let me just put it on the table. How's a nice guy like you, a fun guy like you, wind up in corporate HR? Come on.
Oh, it's very timely. It's Super Tuesday, so it's very timely why you would ask me that question, because I started in politics, of all places. Went to school and in school did a political internship and had an opportunity to intern with the governor, and became involved in like these omnibus boards and commissions. Like, no one realizes there's like 250 boards and commissions that run states out there. Some of them are paid and patronage and, those types of things. But there's a lot of other boards and commissions that don't make a whole lot of sense, that, they're, the state chiropractic board or the state, milk board and those types of things. And so I interned and then quit school and worked for a couple of governors, and then got to be deputy chief of staff. So you're a good political career, you climb to the mountaintop, and then like any good politician, your governor loses and you're out of a job. So then at that point I had a little girl, and I'm like, I like working a little less. So I had an opportunity to work with a couple of different firms, and ended up with West, and had been with West for the last 10 years and had a very fast career path. Very West Corporation is very acquisition oriented. In the 10 years I've been here, we've done about 16 acquisitions. So not the shine guy. Raised my hand, said I'll go places. I don't have a problem going out to the sites, and had a great opportunity. And sure enough, like when the VP opportunity came up, I got picked. I was very excited about it. It's been a very good growth phase for me in terms of having, making that transition. I think everybody kind of struggles where you make the transition from, say a public NGO piece to a private, it's like coming out of the military, your transferable skills don't mean anything. You're like, oh yeah, I ran state government. I ran, $250 million, nobody knows. Yeah, it's like, oh, your patronage, your father's daughter, when somebody was in politics, I got you that job. We don't, and so it was really, really challenging. You're like,
so
long story short.
So you're the guy who's out there trying to identify talent, or you're running an organization that's involved with identifying talent. And
we're all talent acquisition hunters, whatever. HR brands itself, it's the same thing. We need people, and so it's all out there gauging on how you can lucratively on the cheap attack, get more applicants in the door. That's the clue here. What you got to do, you got to be able to cheaply engage, in the marketplace on how you get the most qualified applicants for your roles.
So things have changed a lot over the last 5-6 years in terms of how organizations are able to identify talent. Information is more readily available. 5-6 years ago. Lord knows when I got into recruiting was the 70s.
Yeah.
It was the Stone Ages, and there was no data available to help a firm identify people. Now it's clearly different. What do you see? How is your organization looking to identify and engage with talent? And what should people be doing to be found by an organization like yours?
I think a lot of things haven't changed. I think, we talk about applicant tracking systems, and the process of filling an application. I mean, when you're either unemployed or looking for a new job, it becomes a very arduous. You're going through these different systems. They all look the same. You've got, you're forgetting, which company you apply for because all the applications look the same, in terms of really hunting for a new role. I think, part of what's switched is the applicant's point of view, and what they're looking at a company. And not only understanding what that job is, they're understanding who are the incumbents in that job, who left that job, who are the hiring managers in that job, what are their backgrounds, and what are the content, what's the culture related to that, and so the days of just a link in a job posting are over. It's like having all this applicant, collateral for them to look at, whether it's audio, whether it's video, whether it's virtual tours. I mean, they're making decisions about where they want to work way before they even engage with you on an application or an interview. I mean, they'll have your applicant that you decide to interview has at least, 5 or 6 different areas that they can go to really drill down what your workplace is like and to really hone in, what their questions are. I think for us as employers, obviously, HR it's never a significant investment. You're not going to have a staff of thousands for HR unless you work for, Fortune 500 company. And so we've looked at automated tools, in deploying sort of, whether it's IVR screening, audio screening, or if it's video screening, trying to find ways in the marketplace so that we can simply try to understand who these applicants are, and get that first interview out of the way. I think that's usually the biggest obstacle of what we see in the screening process, or the time killer isn't necessarily, the application process or the screening of the resume for us. It's understanding who that person is relative to their resume and trying to uncover those transferable skills that are going to make them successful for the role. And ideally, as the recruitment team, we're listening for that. What are those words that they're using? Not in the resume, but what are they using in a video interview? What are they using in a video cover letter? What is their branding? Where are they deployed relative to the various social media sites? Everybody is using that at some kind of level in terms of your personal brand.
So I love the fact that you're bringing video into the equation. Video cover letters, video resumes. And I did an interview with one of the founders of HireView very early on in Job Search Radio. And I was fascinated by the analytics that are behind some of these systems, where they're making comparisons between existing people on staff and the job applicant to see how things match up between the two. Now, when you're looking at, I'm going to use video cover letters. First of all, what tech does your organization use currently? I mean,
typically it's you're deploying YouTube or something along those lines, or Blue Jeans associated with that. HireView is one of those things that we've utilized as well in terms of cover. It varies from site to site, on what's available. A lot of it is all applicant driven on what they want to reveal in that process. And so we use HireIQ right now for an IVR audio experience, so it's not all encompassing, and different sites are deploying different pieces depending on the role. There's still a fair amount of manual interviewing happening. I'm not going to say that that's ever going to kind of go away, but certainly you're seeing in team interview processes, you're seeing more and more of this automation approach take place. And so applicants need to understand when they're doing a video interviewing or they're doing a HireIQ, that experience goes beyond even the recruiter, even the hiring manager. I mean, you can, that link and that coding could go through several different screenings before they even get brought into the door. People are reviewing that at, if it's a panel interviewing process, it could be discovered at several different layers. And so when applicants walk in, some of them are unprepared. The fact that, managers are educated on what their responses were for that first interview that maybe occurred a couple of weeks ago.
So what can a person do to be noticed by an organization like yours? I presume we're going to get into social media at this point in order to make themselves attractive, right?
Yeah, I think honestly, it's speaking the language that my organization speaks. And it's not, some of it's flattery and understanding the space and where we feel like we're going in this space, whether it's unified communications or it's safety services or, it's deployment of alerts and notifications and such, or school messaging. It's understanding, the role, what role fit, how your role fits into the overall organizational structure and what you can contribute to it. And if you speak the language, even if you're not coming from a competitor, you're in a better instance to sort of add value, and understand, hey, here's what I did for this company A, and here's what I can do for you at West Corporation. And these two are comparable, and I feel like this adds value in terms of how I can see myself in your corporation. And so it's really understanding not just the job descriptions, because these things are very they're they can be brutal
items.
They can be brutal. I mean, they can be I like 144 characters. That's why I love Twitter. It's like, keep it simple. Here's what the job does. All I do, what do? You hire people, you find people, you keep it simple. Some of the job descriptions go into so much detail that are so far out scope that it's hard for an HR organization to keep up, with a valid job description when we go to market. So a lot of what you get about the role is really understanding how well the recruiter understands and understanding how well the hiring manager understands, but understanding what the team does. And that's where sort of like a platform like LinkedIn comes in, where they can gauge, okay, I see this person with this background. I wonder if this is what they're doing. I see they got a Java developer. So I wonder if that's, if that's what the project manager is that they're supporting or something along those lines. And so having some intuitiveness, and understanding what that team looks like is important. And like, there are tools out there. You just have to work them. You have to be engaged. And certainly, I'm not saying do this for every company that you apply for, because I don't want you to waste your time. But when you do get that interview and you do get to that interview stage, making the most of that moment and understanding the intelligence associated with the team is going to be more beneficial than not to you in terms of really selling yourself to the company.
So if I'm getting you right, Chris, what I heard you say is not just to simply use LinkedIn as the research tool to find out about the hiring manager, although that's obviously something that someone should do. But I also heard you talk about researching the team members as well, trying to pick up on the language and the subtleties and the nuance associated with how they communicate, what they really do, the language that they speak, so you can speak that same language with them. Did I get that right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, people hire diverse team members. I'm not saying, they all have to look the same, they walk the same or something along those lines, but understanding LinkedIn has tools that you can look at recent hires. If you're a LinkedIn premium member, there's tools out there that you can deploy to really understand how this role fits into that role, or understand who might be the exiting member of that team. I mean, there's a lot of research that can be done, at that stage. I mean, on the video interview or video cover letter, let's say video cover letter, if you've got content out there that you want to talk about, it's about not regurgitating your resume. Okay? Nobody wants, and we're going to read your resume. We're going to look at it. I don't need somebody to sit here and say that. When we go to market, generally what I look for in a video cover letter, I look for two things about the job that connect with me, whether they're in general terms. If you want to be in a sales role, what are those great sales things that you've done or you've been successful at? Have metrics, understand, what types of things that I would look at to evaluate performance, and then two personal things, and intermingle those things. A video cover letter is a way to show your personality, associated with your resume, to show kind of energy you have, to show your engagement, what you're excited about. I mean, I think that's probably the most telling thing. Cover letters themselves, not worth a whole lot. We read those things, we get lost. Video cover letters, we click on those links. We want to know what's going on with that. Don't keep it more, think of it as think of it as you're looking at your mobile. How long will you look at a video in your mobile? Like 2 minutes, if that. No one's going to want a long, drawn-out story, but people don't mind hearing a story that you can craft that talks about, who you are, how you can add value, what you like doing, and has personality associated with it. I mean, if you've got good energy, if it comes off as somebody that's creative, that can really benefit and speak the language, it's going to give you an edge. You're going to be able to get your story quicker, and you're going to get more to the harder questions, I guess. A lot of the screening is done at the recruiter level, and it's not, some of it's not substantive. All recruiters have very levels of skill set, right? So there's some screening questions out there that you can trip up on that really aren't relevant to the job or aren't as important to the hiring manager as it is to the recruiter. So you want to demonstrate skill early on in the process, so when that recruiter gets on the phone with you, you're number one with a bullet. They're going to get you to the hiring manager instantaneously because you're speaking the language.
Beautiful. And we're going to be back with more from Chris in just a moment. But first...
Hi, it's Jeff, and I just want to let you know I'm getting very close to launching JobSearchCoachingHQ.com. That's my new site where I'm going to be giving expert coaching advice to job hunters, videos, podcasts from this show, articles that I've written, plus one-on-one coaching at very affordable prices. Now, if you'd like to be among the first to learn about the launch of the site, go over to JobSearchCoachingHQ.com and sign up in the subscription box in the right-hand column. The only time you're going to get messages from me is at the time of launch, so you don't have to fear tons of spam. It's just going to be one simple message and one follow-up. That's it. So, again, come over to JobSearchCoachingHQ.com, sign up, and come join me for great advice.
Okay, we're back. So, Chris, you were talking earlier about some of the tools that a job hunter can use to kind of play with LinkedIn and do some deeper dives into an organization. And you mentioned on the premium side of things that you can find out details about team members and such. Do you remember some of the tools that you would recommend people use?
I would say that. I would say certainly Google News Alerts or any functional platform news alerts to understand, what's happening with the company recently, especially specifically at the site that you have. Anything you can educate yourself outside collateral that the recruiter's giving you is important. I don't necessarily want to see candidates that can repeat canned things that are on my corporate site. I invest a lot in my corporate site, but if you're able to kind of show me something where you've done research that I know wasn't easily accessible, it just demonstrates your interest in the company and why you can fit that, and so I think, Boolean searches on Google News Alert, certainly understanding how you can capture an audience. You can go to free sites like Hoover's, you can go Zoom Info. Some of these sites, they're not paid sites. You can get some basic information out of a company to understand what their structure is. If it's a publicly traded company, kind of look at the stock associated with that, try to understand what kind of trends are happening with the stock. It's just, there's a lot of content out there that you can really digest, and it could be a grind, if you're interviewing a lot, if you're going through a lot, you may do these in the first or second interview. You're like, oh, I'm excited. This is my dream job. And then when you get 15 interviews in, you're like, I'm just going to go. And you're like, no, you should consistently keep that energy because it's going to pay off. I mean, you're going to see demonstrated results with that knowledge. It's going to make you a better applicant than others, and that's what it is. I mean, we're competitive. These slots are competitive. We're evaluating. We're competitive. We're engaging, and so you need to understand when you're interviewing. You may be the greatest person ever on from your resume, but it's a competition, and maybe it's yours to lose, but it's still up for grabs. You have to be able to close. You have to be able to engage at a high level. And I think there's various gaps. Video is hard for somebody that's old man like me, been around for a while. Video has been very challenging to get myself and my persona out there and demonstrate, how do you engage over video. Millennials, they're Skyping, they're FaceTiming, they're going through all those things. We're not, right? So it's understanding that you got to get familiar with the platform. Your interviewing skill when you're in that interview, your video interviewing is just as important as how you interview face to face, because I feel like the trend is upward in these automated either live video interview captures or these other post and response video platforms. And so you've got to be able to demonstrate that skill. And it is a skill. You have to work for that. You can't just assume that you're going to be fine just by logging in, and it's going to be fine. You've got to be able to set a tone and a pace that you feel comfortable displaying your message and your brand.
So true. Folks, as you listen to me, you can't help, if you've listened to the show for any length of time, I'm not 24. So
the first video you do is horrible. The second video you do is horrible. And then eventually you're just like, okay, we're all reality stars now. We all have a brand. Understand what your brand is about. Make sure your brand is consistent. And like I said, I tell a really good story about what you think you can do for that company. I mean, and be able to say, look, here's how I fit, in that company, in that role. Now, if you're desired talent, if you have agencies or headhunters pursuing you, yes, it's nice to be loved. It's nice to be pursued, but you should do your homework as well. I mean, it's just going to make you a better fit and where your happiness is. I think, quality of life is becoming more and more a proper decision over pay and all these other things that are out there. Understanding, who I work with and what it's like and what the environment's like is just as important, we can throw a lot of money at you. If you don't like your manager and you don't like your coworkers, you're probably going to leave. And so don't take that job just for money. Take that job for all those other things that you feel like are going to prevail in your favor, that you feel like you're going to be happy, and define what that happiness is.
Cool. So I asked a question earlier, and we went off in a completely different direction. So I'm going to come back and circle back to it because I think it's an important question. And that is, how is your organization finding people? Like, yes, I know you're doing skill searches and stuff like that, but you're not just simply going on LinkedIn to find people.
No. No, it's not LinkedIn. No, it's a portion of that. Generally, like, we do a 30-30 rule. It's like, okay, so like your 30% is referrals. Okay. Your employees, if you're a recruiter on this call and if you're not leveraging whatever employees that you have for referrals within the company, you are missing out. At some kind of level, you have to understand that they are your ambassadors. They are your brand, and certainly they can prevail in finding similar type talent. Now, is it always going to be the best talent? Probably not. And don't use stereotypical, I hired Joe and his brother's Mike, and Mike is just going to be like Joe, because odds are it's not, and understand that comes into play. But I think like those become brand ambassadors. If you get people excited about your roles and having a really true good referral program in that process, and like for new hires, we're having them take pictures of their desk, and putting that on social media. You're leveraging, I'm excited about working here at West. Here's where I work. Here's the break room. Understand, that, they are broadcasting their excitement about the job to others so people can kind of buy into that. Maybe it's been a while since people felt that way about their job. And so I think, that's truly, a mechanism that you have to master. You have to devote time to working your referral market, taking a look at your bonuses, taking a look at what you're paying, but more importantly, understanding that within your referral referral market, you've got super users in there. You've got people that are super social media content creators. You know, some of them are millennials, some of them aren't, but understand that you've got to give them the tools. Okay. Everybody's embarrassed to refer a bad person, right? Nobody wants to do that, but you can get people out there developing your content within their other social media sites really easy, as long as you're pointing them in the right direction and making them, make it available. Hey, I'm not asking you to go talk to anybody about the role. Just share this on your profile. Share this on Instagram. Share this on Twitter. That's all you need to be doing within your referral program. You're letting them available, opening up your net and getting that opportunity and knowing what is connected with that. I would say we still do direct sourcing. That's a huge part. Like anything else, you got to understand who your competitors are, understanding, what works well, in terms of, we're not a platinum tier Google, Microsoft, we're co-pays on our insurance here at West Corporation. So it's not, it's not going to be the best, but it's not going to be worse. But understanding where your company fits in terms of a salary piece and understanding, what talent you typically can attract at what kind of level is great. And direct sourcing is still, it's a good piece. That cold calling has not gone away. That direct emailing and presenting an opportunity has not gone away, because your passive candidates, you have to work harder to engage them at a high level, and you got to find them at the right time. It may be, you email them too early in their career process. They're just learning. They don't want to jump. You may email them too late. They're invested in their 401k. They're on manager path, so it's understanding, where that direct sourcing piece comes from and what that ideal candidate looks like that matches well with you. Postings are here. It's part of our cultural brand that we kind of push out, with our social media package. Certainly, if you're not doing videos, if you're not doing photos, you're missing it. If you're thinking you're just doing links and you think you can have the best well-designed job posting ever, I will tell you, no one's reading it end to end. Okay. It's just not happening, and so you've got to be able to have a branding piece with your job that talks about your culture associated with that can lead to other things. So you're presenting videos with the job posting. You're presenting, a picture. We just recently started posting pictures of hiring managers with the job posting, so like we talked about that interconnectivity of where they can be. And sometimes it's like, who am I going to work for? I'm going to work for that guy, and if that guy's me, I'm going to be excited about having you come here. At least, when you're interviewing, who owns it. And by giving up that information as an employer gives the applicant a whole bunch of research information that they can go out and pursue. So, understand that, the days of just raw links and data is over. You got to be able to tell a story, and that is pictures. The content is out there that you have to develop, and it doesn't have to be corporate. It can be shot on your iPhone. The 6S has a lovely camera. Give that information out there so that visibly applicants can see it. And the numbers show. It's like you put a photo with a job posting. I think our numbers are from 125 to 150% better response rate than the link itself. So that happens. And post, Cribblers, the Monsters, the Indeeds, you're seeing a lot of aggregation. You're seeing Glassdoor, get into that game. Ultimately, like I said, I think, you can have a strategy and use all those platforms and engage. Ultimately, it's about a real faceted approach to understanding, that you're not just using one thing, that you're doing many things, and they're coming through many different avenues to your company to be presented, as an applicant. Depending on the market, certainly we're out there. Virtual career fairs is certainly something. We have a Unisphere product right now that we're excited about. It's early adoption, but millennials love the virtual career fair and love the ability to sort of attend something remotely, not have that same pressure of walking the gauntlet of job fairs, the tables. Everybody hates that. So virtually, like what we find is that nobody wants to be told anymore on the information that they have. They want to be able to peruse it at their leisure. right? They want to be able to pick. And that's where we think virtual is really making a play in terms of you've got content out there and, you search whatever you want. You search whatever company you want, or you pick what area of that company. You can chat room with a recruiter or hiring manager and make those decisions on your own. I think the ability of us telling is over. I don't think you could tell an applicant anything. I think the applicant chooses what they want to see. And then you've got to have your collateral ready to have many different formats to present that. It's interesting. Like, if you haven't experienced a virtual job fair, you should definitely check it out. It's having a fair amount of growth. It's not, like I said, it's not completely saturated, but you are seeing the collegiate scene kind of take off. You're seeing Big Ten and SEC and Big East. These schools are collaborating together and they're using virtual job fairs to present opportunities to their students. So it's a good time for growth. I think certainly the millennials have no qualms. They love it. They'll go in there and they'll pick which companies they want to pursue, and the other ones don't get picked. It's about presenting content that they have interest in.
So cool. We're starting to come up on the end of time with one another.
Okay.
So I just want to make sure before we run out, is there anything that you would want to share with the audience that I haven't asked you about yet?
I just don't be afraid to, really sort of express your personality in the interview process. I think sometimes, this is an American Idol, I don't want you to put on a persona and then turn it on and turn it off, but don't be afraid to talk about things that interest you or that you're passionate about. I think sometimes in the interview process, people leave that out. I did an interview the other day, and got 15 minutes in the interview and it wasn't going well. And then when I uncovered that person's passion, it became so much a better interview. I was able to understand and connect with that person, at that level. And sometimes, like I said, applicants try to hide some of those things, their energy, or, they don't necessarily, want to talk about, they want to give you information you want to hear rather than, what they really have to offer or what they're really engaged in. And I think that's the wrong way to go about it. If you're passionate about something, certainly, be upfront, understand, what excites you about coming to that company, how you feel like you can contribute. And if it's not a fit, it's not a fit, but you should be clear about the expectations of what that is, because ultimately that'll be a determiner on how long you'll stay with that company, if they're able to give you that opportunity or not.
I'll just say that one of the biggest mistakes job hunters make is paralyzing their personality because they got the message somewhere along the line that having a personality is wrong and that you have to be professional.
Well, and it's just,
and there's a fine line between the two. No one's asking you to walk in and act like a jerk. No one's asking you to walk in, dressed inappropriately.
No.
Each of you knows exactly how to behave and conduct yourself, but there's a way of doing it with personality. Let it out. If you hide it and you get hired, you always wonder whether or not you got hired for the act or because they understood, and you'll never know. So better to always let the personality out, get hired for who you are, as well as what you know. You'll be so much happier.
I think so. I think it's the number one fault that you see, especially with some of the millennial talent. They've been told, hey, you can't do this, you can't do that. I think it's always refreshing. And when it's genuine, hopefully you're dealing with HRs and recruiters that are genuine to you. I always try to be honest, in terms of scope. But when the applicant is sincere and they're genuine, you want to be an advocate for that person. That's the person, that the recruiter wants to carry that resume down to the hiring manager and say, you're going to like this person, and here's why, and it's not all going to be on the resume. And so, just understand that that's important, that really connect with that recruiter and be genuine about your approach.
Super. Hey, Chris, thank you so much for making time today. How can people find out about you, about West Corp, the sun, the moon, the stars, the universe?
All right. So, certainly you can visit www.west.com/careers. We're international, so but have about 35 locations throughout North America as well. At West Careers is Twitter. Feel free to follow us. We broadcast jobs there as well. And you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I think it's Chris Brown 0076 or Chris Brown, Vice President of West Corporation. I'm a big LinkedIn user, so feel free to connect. I always look to coach and offer career advice, even if it's not for my role or not for my company. If people have questions a little bit on careers or on scope, feel free to direct message me. I always love to help people, in terms of how they further their career. It's always fun to understand that in the HR process, not everything's going to lead to your company, but it'll hopefully lead to success somewhere else.
Amen, brother. And folks, we'll be back next time with someone else who's going to be here to help you with your job search. I'm Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter. I hope you enjoyed today's show. And if you did, I hope you leave it 5-star review in iTunes. Give it a big thumbs up. Write a great review for it. It helps other people discover the show. Same thing with Stitcher. Same thing with TuneIn. All 3 platforms. If you can leave a favorable review somewhere, it will help someone else. Also want to mention, if you have questions about job hunting, you are not alone. Most people do, but they ask the wrong people for advice. Friends, family, people who know a little bit more than they do. So if you have a question about job search, reach out to me through my website, which is thebiggamehunter.us. Number 1, I've got a ton of information that will help you with your search. And number 2, there's a tab on the top that says, have your job search questions answered. Be happy to do it and help make sure that you're going down the right road. So I'm Jeff Altman. Hope you have a great day. Take care.
For more job search advice, visit Jeff's website at thebiggamehunter.us. That's thebiggamehunter.us.